Hey, thanks for everyone joining us on the political deep dive tonight. We're going to be talking with Kristine Womack, candidate for LPPA's chair, and we'll be talking, of course, about the weekly news, politics, and pop culture, including the Queen getting sick, Russia and Ukraine continuing to do their fun stuff, and the end of the Olympics. So join us here in the next 2.5 minutes, and we'll be looking forward to talking to you. Hey, good evening. Thank you for joining us on the Political Deep Dive. I'm Dave Valente, and this week we are joined by Kristine Cousler-Womack, and that's Cousler, right? Or
Counselor.
Cousler.
Story of my life, though. Story of my life.
Right. Valente, I'm actually, this is probably the worst part of the year for me because I'm always called Valentine. But, I'm okay with that. There could be worse things. I've been called worse things, certainly.
I've been called Kristen, Kirsten, Christina, because it's with a K, so everyone assumes it's not Kristine. Yeah. And then my last name has been Coleslaw, Counselor, Cousler.
That's awful.
Children are horrible.
All right. Well, so you're a candidate for the Libertarian Party of Pennsylvania, and we're waiting for some of our other panelists to get on. I know Emily Hurley has been having issues with her computer tonight, so hopefully we'll be seeing her. And feel free to drop us comments like Mr. Berinsky. You're on a better show now. Yeah, you just came from another show, didn't you?
I did. I was on the Porcupine with Adam Nutter, and I was doing a Q&A with the 3 candidates for chair.
So who else is running for chair with you?
Rob Calburn, he's from Allegheny. He is a lawyer and traveling musician. And I'm an economics grad. He made sure to say those things, and their accomplishments, so they should be acknowledged.
Mm-hmm.
And then John Waldenberger, who likes to run for like everything. John's a good guy. He's running for chair and for secretary. So, but it was the three of us. John is from Bucks County, and he is formerly the newsletter editor, and he was on finance. He was on a bunch of committees, and he's run some elections or races for campaigns.
Excellent. So, how did you get into the Libertarian Party?
I like that question. I get asked all the time, especially with running for chair, because I get to talk about my ex-husband, which doesn't happen. Positive comments about my ex-husband don't happen too often. My ex-husband and I were Republicans, and we voted for McCain. I know I made mistakes in my life. I had a lipstick Republican pin from Sarah Palin when she was in New York. Like, I made sure I bought that. I thought it was super cool. I think it's upstairs in my attic. I want to find it. Anyway, we were distraught at the results of that race. And so we were looking for a way to have our voice be heard instead of just picking one of the sides. And he introduced me to Ron Paul. And so that's how I was introduced to libertarianism. However, that is not what kept me into libertarianism. It's the activists, it's the Jen Moores, it's the Steve Sheets, it's the Spike Cohens, it's all those people that are out on the ground doing the work, spreading the message, that have kept me in the party. I became active in the party and changed my registration in 2016. And then I worked on the Gary Johnson campaign locally. And then I got sexually harassed by some people in the local affiliate, so I kind of backed away for a minute. And then I came back in 2018, and I've been the vice chair of York County. I've been the community organizer. And then in 2020, I was the state manager for that lady right there, Joe Jorgen. I guess there's a big flag too. But I was the state manager with Sam Robb for the Joe Jorgensen campaign. And, I volunteered to do some events for it, and they were like, "Ooh, you want to do work? So we're going to put you to more work," which is, key in libertarianism. So I just kind of got thrown into the state aspect then. But Ron Paul brought me in, but he's not what kept me.
Yeah, I always say that attend libertarian events, win libertarian prizes, and those prizes usually involve jobs and responsibility.
I wear like 12 hats. Yeah.
Everybody really who's on the ground has multiple hats all the time, and I guess that's part of the issue of why we get a lot of people that get burnt out of doing continuing to do work, or they do a stint like myself. I did a stint as state chair. Now I'm on the LNC, and I'm like, I need a break. I need to step back and think about myself for a while. But you've been involved. So now with the Jorgensen campaign, you've gotten off that. Now you've been involved in the Moulton Maneuver in Pennsylvania. Talk about to anybody who has not heard what the Moulton Maneuver is and why it elected 170 plus libertarians in 2020. Tell us about the Moulton Maneuver.
So the Moulton Maneuver was created or established, at least in Pennsylvania, by Dr. Chuck Moulton. And, what he did was he realized that there was vacancies, positions in the government that people were not running anyone for. And what happens with those positions is they get to appoint their friends. And that's not okay. These are people that are set to do stuff for our counties and our boroughs and our townships, and they should be elected by the constituents. So what he has done is he's got this system that he's kind of perfected and is working on all the time, where we identify the races that have no one running for them. And then they send out a mailer to all of the registered libertarians in the state in those counties and encourage them to run. And what they do is they don't tell them that they'll win, but they're like, there's no one else running. So like, your chance if you're on the ballot is very good. In total in the state this past in 2021, we got 176 people elected into office. Now, to be frank, not every one of them will take office. but vast majority, I would probably say about 160 of them will. And then you add that to the list of, I think, 35 that we had still in office previously. We have about 200 people, which is more than the whole country combined. And one of the things that I want to do as chair is something we did in York, was take the Moulton Maneuver and then kind of hawkify it. Chuck does great work, and Jen and Wes Benedict do great work with this program. But what I would like to do is what we do in York, and we look at the races beforehand. We look and see who's on the ballot and identify where there's no one running, so that we can start soliciting for that position before the Moulton Maneuver letters go out. Because the problem that we're trying to kind of figure out a way around is primaries happen in May, and then we don't get the results until mid-June. And then paperwork has to be submitted by the first week in August. So that only gives you a month and a half to find people to run for office, to get them the paperwork, to get the signatures, to get them on the ballot, to submit all the paperwork. That's not that much time. So there are flaws in the system, and it's because of the government. But by trying to identify those positions beforehand, like York has done, will help in expediting that process.
Absolutely. And I want to welcome to our show, Emily. How you doing, Emily?
Hello. Good evening.
Good evening. And we've got new people coming into the chat on YouTube. Thanks to all our viewers on YouTube. But Craig, thank you for joining us. You're never late to the party. The party will go on. Just come and hang out with us, man. Now your husband ran for office in this last election, was elected.
Yes.
But has had issues being seated in his seat. So talk about that a little bit.
So my husband was a stupid 21-year-old, as many of us have made poor decisions back then. And he got caught, and he served his time, and he's lived an upstanding life that is community-oriented since. And we looked through the laws. We looked at precedent in our county. The mayor of York City is a felon from 20 years prior to his, election. And so everything that we saw said that he could run for office. So we submitted the paperwork. It wasn't challenged. And he stood outside of the polling place for 10 to 12 hours that day, because he knew that he was running unopposed, but he wanted people to know who they were voting for before they did. He actually garnered 95% of the votes in our borough, and he was running for a 2-year seat on the borough council, and there's 4 people running uncontested for 4 seats on the 4-year term. And he got more votes than all 4 of those people. And they've been staples in the community. So, I mean, there was a desire to have him in office, definitely. Someone in our community, I have an idea of who, ended up filing a complaint with the borough due to his past. And the DA took it up, and they challenged him, filed an injunction to keep him from taking the oath of office. We ended up starting a fund, trying to look into legal recourse. He ended up, after talking to a number of lawyers, including, this is actually a funny story, including the day he kind of decided that he wasn't going to fight it anymore, we had our county meeting. And at that county meeting, a lawyer came who was interested in learning about the Libertarian Party, who defended someone in a very similar case to my husband years prior in the Pennsylvania appellate court. It was like this weird, like kismic situation. And so he ended up, questioning him, asking him questions about whether he should pursue it or not. And he told him that it shouldn't have ever went to the Pennsylvania appellate court, the way that it was processed and everything, and that his best bet would be to go for a pardon. So that's where we're at right now. He had a meeting with the DA. The DA is going to write him a letter of recommendation and help to expedite the process for a pardon with the Board of Pardons. So normally that process takes about 2 to 3 years. And the DA is saying that he can help expedite it to maybe a year. So he's getting letters of recommendation. Jen from the state has offered one. Spike Cohen has offered to write him a letter of recommendation, his employer and things like that. So he's definitely got the support behind him, and he's got the DA support, which is really great. And he's already started working with some organizations to help with criminal reform.
That's fantastic. I mean, it's awful that he's not being allowed to take office. But it's fantastic that you're taking this situation and creating positive change out of it. So I know that there are some other candidates within Pennsylvania that have faced the same issues.
Yes.
Talk about some of those.
Yes. There's one person who won mayor up in north central Pennsylvania. While their cases are kind of similar because of felonies and convictions and what have you, there's a time difference. Dave's stuff was nearly 20 years ago. This person's things, the conviction was 6 months ago. Now, granted, the charges were applied 7 years ago, and then they were in court for those 7 years. And I talked to this person. I don't want to put their name on blast because,
sure.
It's not my business, their situation. And I told them that if I were in their shoes, based on what Dave's facing and everything, I wouldn't fight it. Because, if Dave can't take office and his stuff is nearly 20 years ago, and he's gotten a proven track record, not saying that this person is bad, but he's got, years between, and he did, 3.5, 4 years in prison, if he's literally proven that he's a different person, and they're not allowing him to take office, I really think their case is going to be significantly more difficult because the conviction was last June, I think it was. So I did talk to them about how I think that, I think for their mental sanity that it would be something that I wouldn't pursue, but they are pursuing it from my understanding, and I wish them luck, and hopefully maybe it changes the precedent. And that's what Dave's actually working on is trying to change and reaching out to legislation, representatives and senators and things like that, because, there's an argument to be made for cruel and unusual punishment for something you've already served your time for. And, he wants to serve his community, and he's being stopped. His criminal record is actually preventing him from doing his entire job at his regular job, because he's a contractor with cabinets and countertops, and they do some government jobs. And because of his past, he can't even go on the job site. So it's literally prohibiting him from, earning a paycheck. I mean, he gets a paycheck, but you know what I mean?
Which is strange because, we've had federal legislation about, getting rid of the checkbox on applications and things like that. There has been appetite in the last few years about getting some kind of criminal justice reform that is, one of the tenets of criminal justice and people doing time is they're restored once they have done their time. They should have things like their rights to vote, their rights to run for office, to be restored, especially if it hasn't specifically been written into their judgment that they shouldn't. I mean, there are some people that I don't know that should be allowed to run for office, but a lot of people have spent time in prison for really suspect crap,
stupid stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. And
there's a whole social construct of treating felons or not even felons, but people who have been in jail as third-class citizens. It's a problem endemic with society, and it's the Karens of the world who act based solely on fear without thinking, that perpetuate this. And they use the government as their bludgeon. And so they're absolutely part of the problem. And this is absolutely a symptom of something that we need to fight against and bring light to make real change in government, not just individual lives,
Yeah, one of the points Dave kept bringing up, that I tried to reiterate when I was trying to spread the message of, what he was trying to do is, if this is what's affecting a 40-year-old white man, like how is this affecting communities of color who, the war on drugs has affected, and they've been, at 17 charged as an adult with a drug felony, and now that's on their permanent record forever. And, it's stopping them from being able to turn their life around and be a pillar in their community, and want to serve. And if that's the case, we found out in Florida, they allow people with criminal backgrounds to run for office. You just have to fill out this form and disclose it. I'm not opposed to something like that up here, having full transparency. And that's one of the reasons why Dave was opposed to getting a pardon at first, because he doesn't want to hide from his past. He is a success story, and he wants to shout it from the rooftop that, I think there's a 46% rate for people to go back to jail. And, when he got out of prison,
recidivism,
thank you. It's a big word, and I've been drinking vodka because I was on Adam Nutter's show. So he's a good guy, but I, was prepared for myself. When Dave got out, it was like 56. It was, it hasn't changed that much. And we need to realize that the only way that we can get these people to move on with their life and to have that second chance is by giving that opportunity. And, with the way that the system is currently set up, that's not happening.
Yeah. We had a question from the audience. Ryan Berinsky asks, will you commit to collecting signatures for the best candidate in Pennsylvania, Liz Terwilliger?
I'm surprised. I'm glad you said that name right, because I know her and I say it wrong all the time. Ryan, to answer your question, I absolutely will. Regardless of what happens in Williamsport, my goal is getting libertarians on the ballot. And Liz is like the hardest working, I'm second, but the hardest working libertarian in Pennsylvania. And, she is a likely candidate to win the community outreach she does. I would be dumb of me not to come up, and I will be up there actually next weekend for her homeless event. She's doing a sleep out. Oh. I will be sleeping in northern Pennsylvania outside in February.
Ooh.
That's how much I love Liz Terwilliger and support her.
Hardy, yeah. I full disclosure, I donate monthly to Liz's campaign. I think she's fantastic, and at least I got her name right tonight, so I'm batting 500 right now. So.
Yep.
So, talk about your goals as running for state chair. What are your goals for the Libertarian Party of Pennsylvania? I mean, arguably, this is one of the most successful affiliates in the state. I mean, not some people complain about it, but the results are there.
Yep.
And what are your goals to bring it forward into 2024, 2022, and 2023?
I'd argue we are the most successful affiliate in the country.
I can't argue against that. No.
With that said, we are not perfect. We have a lot of divisiveness in our states. We have a lot of partisan lines, and thank you, Ryan. We need to find a way to work together despite our differences. And I think that my experience working on the Joe Jorgensen campaign with people from all backgrounds gives me a leg up in all of this, because I've proven that I can work with people from any PAC or caucus or anything like that. And that's my goal, is to try and find that common ground that we can all build that foundation from, and then move forward on policy changes, getting people elected. For me, one of the things that I want to do is make sure that we're putting up good candidates for these offices that are contested, because that's how we get this messaging. I know everyone talks about this bold messaging and this edgelord messaging. For me, that messaging comes from our candidates. And we need to be putting up good candidates, because they don't care what the three of us say, because we're not running for office. We're not on the ballot. We're not going to be a spokesperson for the people. But when Tim McMaster was running for the PA Senate 48th District, he was on, I had him on with the League of Women Voters, with the NAACP. He was out with Fair Districts. He was with the Legalized 420 or the Legalized, medical marijuana or whatever. He was being the representative of the Libertarian Party, introducing these organizations to who we are as a party and what we stand for. And that is one of my goals, is to make sure that work continues and we still get that representation. I also want to make sure that we're building the county affiliates. York is very successful. I would argue that we're the most successful one in the state. And Ryan, I'll fight you on that if you want. But we had 14 libertarians elected in York County alone. That's more than some states have entirely. So, we are very successful, and there's a lot of things that we do down here, and I want to be able to give those resources out to the other counties, how to find events to set up at, how some events don't allow for political parties or political associations to participate, what kind of literature you should have out, things that draw people in, community events that you can do. We do trash cleanups periodically throughout the year. Some people in my county think they're trash. They think that they're useless, worthless, and have no purpose, serve no purpose. But when we're out there, we've gotten media coverage on them. We've talked to, people who live in the area. And, my goal as chair is to give those resources, that information out so that people can do what York is doing and has been doing and has been successful at.
That's fantastic. I mean, that kind of activism is needed not just in Pennsylvania, but all over the country. I mean, you're right. I mean, York has 11 more elected members than the entire state of West Virginia. So, that's amazing. York probably has more people than West Virginia, but that's another discussion. Let's see.
Ryan makes a good point. They had 3 countywide candidates.
They did have 3? Okay. And then
York had a PA Senate candidate that received 3.4% of the entire vote, which is the most any Libertarian has received in the state of Pennsylvania.
Nice. Encourage individuals to seek action from committees or continue to have them individuals bring motion. Sorry if this makes no sense.
I get what he's trying to convey. This was a big point in our 8.5-hour meeting yesterday for the Libertarian Party of Pennsylvania, which is a whole other subject of what my goal is for chair. But, okay. Ours was a 4-way race for Tim. Just want to say that. Anyway, the committee should be workshopping. And if someone has a question about something or has a concern, they should be bringing it to the committee to help them in navigating that concern and addressing it. We are a bottom-up organization. Clean as day. Yesterday, I was removed as the board rep for membership from the state. We preach all the time that we're a bottom-up organization, but the state party, the state board dictated how a committee was supposed to be represented on the board, and that's not okay. And if they're going to do it to me, what's to say that it's not going to happen to someone else? And that's not okay. Whether I like that person or not, whether I agree with them or not, it's not okay. The committee is in charge of their responsibilities. Whatever is set forth in the bylaws and the policy manual, the Constitution, that committee is responsible for that. And that is who should be being addressed when it comes to credentialing. Membership should be addressed. When it comes to the email servers, IS should be addressed. When it comes to fundraising, finance should be addressed. Those are the committees that are responsible for those tasks, and that's who should be communicated with those. Any ask regarding those should be coming from those committees. It should not be coming from so-and-so, because they should be working with those committees. Because, again, we wouldn't be telling York or Susquehanna Valley what to do in their counties because we are a bottom-up organization.
Okay. So let's talk about, why do you guys have just 8-hour, 9-hour, 3-day long Donner Party type meetings?
Where everyone gets trashed by the end.
Well, I mean, if it's turned into a party, I mean, I could understand that, but there's a lot of acrimony.
There's a lot of so Jen has tried really hard this past year to run those meetings as efficiently as possible. And when I was looking back at minutes and stuff during the audit that we just did, I realized that the meetings we had last summer were only like 2 hours, maybe 3. Like they weren't what they are. So it makes you wonder what happened between July and now. And it was a lot of divisiveness in the party. It was a lot of personal egos, I believe, in my opinion, a lot of personal agendas. And it's unfortunate because there was a lot of work that needed to be done, but there was a lot of revenge. I mean, we talked about trying to remove the executive director a number of times. And, then they tried to do it again yesterday. They tried, not to remove him, but to censure him. There's things that are warranted, and then there's things that aren't, and there's things that are important and need to go through the board, and there's things that are not. There's things that should be up to the purview of the committee, and they're not being given that permission. I mean, and then part of the reason is all like Jen tried to do the agenda.
You're sickening.
Freaking Ryan. Poor T did. He loves chaos. You know, Jen tried to put the agenda out a week, you know, the Sunday before the meeting. And, you know, there's things that happen. There's some committees that didn't meet till the next day. There are some people who tried to do last minute motions. There's some people who try to bully motions onto the agenda. And it just becomes a shit show, to be honest, for lack of another term. And, you know, it really comes down to, it's not the chair's responsibility for the length of the meeting. It's the VODs.
No, I will say that I've had Jen on my show before, and I adore Jen. I think she's one of the hardest working folks out there. She has put up with so much shit. And I would have lost my shit on people. As state chair, I had meetings that, you know, my philosophy on meetings is no fucky roundy. Let's do it and get out. And, you know, if we want to after the meeting talk and bullshit and all that stuff, that's great. Hey, you know, that I don't have a problem with that. But the business, get it done and get off.
Yep.
And then be on with it. But I mean, I can't say enough good things about Jen because the way that she has conducted herself in the face of all of this. And, you know, she's earned a well-earned rest once the convention is over, and she'll probably sleep for a month.
She'll probably sleep longer than that. I know that she's planned some camping trips with her family, and she definitely deserves a break. And, you know, she's told me a number of times the only reason she ran is because she wanted to make sure the Moulton Maneuver was successful. And regardless of all the stonewalling, all the organizational sabotage, as some people are referring to it, you know, she made the Moulton Maneuver successful. So she did the job she came to do.
Yeah. You know what? And when the problem I have with all the stuff that's been going on is that, you know, the whole takeover is where they've targeted. They want to take over the most successful affiliates. And really kind of hamstring us going into 2022 and 2024. And I'm concerned about all of that going down. So, you know, I'm looking forward to. I'll be in Pennsylvania for the convention. Should be a fun time.
I will be mom/candidate because my son will be there with us.
I will be
drunk the whole time.
That's a good possibility. Maybe not. I don't know. I haven't really been drinking much the last few months, so I've maybe cannabis. But well, you know, we'll see. But I'm looking forward to seeing you there. I saw you. I met you at the Region 5 training.
Yes. Yep.
In August
with my car with the broken back windshield. Yep.
Yeah. That was a fun weekend though. I mean, I really enjoyed that weekend, the training that they did. But so tell everybody how they can find out information about you, and if they want to, you know, especially our viewers in Pennsylvania, if they're interested in helping you out and what they need to do.
Well, I'm pretty simple. I just have a Facebook page. It's just Kristine Cousler-Womack for LPPA chair. There I post some of my history, some of the things that I'm into and do, and some of my experience from Joe Jorgensen's campaign to some of the stuff that I was in with my youth. I've used Robert's rules for over 20 years of my life, so I'm very familiar. I mean, I still need to clean up and refresh myself on some of the newer edition stuff, but I'm familiar with the basics of Robert's. And you know,
cancer.
What?
Roner's cancer.
It can be when manipulated and abused. Yes.
Exactly. Exactly.
I was talking to Lee in Lehigh, and he's like, you know, we were talking about Roberts, and he was like, you know, the purpose of Roberts was to keep a meeting moving. It was not to stonewall things. It was not to obstruct the work to be done. And in fact, you know, from what he was saying, the initial use of Roberts was actually if someone to tell someone that something's out of order, Lee said, was actually out of order via Roberts to tell someone that it's out of order because you're just stonewalling and obstructing the meeting and the progress to be done. So it's more disciplinary action should be taken. So that's one thing that I'm looking more into is those people that are disruptive, what the ability of the chair is outside of the purview of the bylaws and constitution and policy manual, to try and make sure that our meetings move effectively and efficiently. Yeah. But yes, Facebook, LPPA chair, Kristine, and you'll find all the stuff, where I'm at, what podcast I'm going to be on, because I'm on 3 this week coming up.
So I have to give you lots of credit for your stamina. You came right from a podcast this evening, right onto my podcast.
And I went to bed at 2:30 in the morning and woke up at 6:30.
Oh.
And then went to church and cleaned my house and took care of my child. Yeah. I've been told that I am an Energizer bunny and that I put 30 hours of work into a 24-hour day because I'm also the PTO president of my son's school.
Oh, wow.
And I'm a substitute paraprofessional in the school district, and I'm a community organizer in my local county and borough where I organize vendor shows and community outreach things. So I do a lot, but it's because of teamwork. It's not just me, it's teamwork. And that's what, I want to bring to the state.
Fantastic. Well, I'm happy we've got our fourth to come on, Mr. Dan Richman. He is probably getting his mic and camera set up on the screen.
I am sorry.
I hear you, man.
It's timing, Dan.
It's all good. So best of luck in your race. So we're gonna get into the news of the week. We just found out today that Queen Elizabeth II has contracted COVID from probably Charles, maybe Camilla. I don't know, but she's 95 years old. There's always the worry, that she is, but she's been vaccinated. She's been boosted, all that fun stuff. It's always concerning when a 95-year-old gets anything, really. I mean, not even just COVID. Like the normal cold is a cause for worry. Basically, anything that causes a bout of pneumonia. We got welcome, Dan.
What's up, Aaron?
Right on. So,
my first thought about this is, right, this is probably the most protected person on the planet from COVID, and she still got it.
Yeah.
So
got the best medical staff and everything.
Yep. It just goes to show you that it is A, insidious, but B, the best laid plans of mice and men can't necessarily stop things. And so, I don't know. I mean, it goes without saying, do what you can. I mean, it's good that she didn't get it for 2 years. I think that's better than the alternatives. But, at what price?
Yeah. This will be I've said it before that COVID will be a very interesting case study in the next 20 years as to, the impact of the responses and all of that stuff, where things like suicide have gone up, that people's mental health has gone up, kids' abilities in schools has gone down, listening to teachers all the time talking about how kids, didn't have that year and a half or 2 years in school are just
and all their test scores are going to go up.
Well, they've regressed. They can't really function in a classroom environment anymore. And yeah, some people will say that's an improvement.
I actually work in the school. I'm a paraprofessional, so I'm more of a teacher's aide. But my son's in second grade, and when I look at his reading levels, standard second grader at this point in the year should be at an M level reading. And, he was a little bit behind previously because being young and stuff for his grade, but they've gotten to the point where they are not looking at that. They're not looking at those benchmarks anymore. They're just looking for progress throughout the school year. And we see it with the first graders, especially because they've never had even remotely a real classroom experience. My son at least had half of his kindergarten year where it was normal, and then it went to virtual. But first grade, they don't know how to do like anything, and it's really, they're learning every day, and they're growing and progressing, but they're really behind what the standard first grader should know and do. And that's a problem. And we're going to see that in, state assessments and testing and everything as we go forward.
I think with testing going forward, especially, we tend to use testing to compare ourselves internationally with, some of the Scandinavian countries, and we always end up lagging behind those countries. But the one thing that we don't talk about with those standardized test scores is that we take all of our students' test scores and put them up against Finland's test scores. Finland's generally, their test scores are against kids that have been placed into at more advanced learning academies and things like that. Finland and Sweden, they do some things that I agree with as far as their education system goes. If you're going to continue a public education system that the parents have the control of the money, they send their children wherever they want to go to a certain point, and then they test in to get into like college preparatory stuff. So when we test our students, our test numbers are all of our students versus the college prep kids in Sweden and Finland. And
it's even more than that, though. So I am a former teacher, and I taught in Massachusetts, which if Massachusetts were tested as a country as its own, it's number 4 in the world. The problem is Mississippi. Mississippi is dragging the United States down, and maybe West Virginia, but it is but
it was specifically Dave.
You're right. Specifically, Dave. If you would stop sneaking into the high school, those standardized
21 Drunk Street.
You can correct me if I'm wrong, Dan, but I believe like we used to be number 1 in education back in like the 40s and stuff like that. And then when we got Department of Education and everything like that, our test scores and just assessments in general just started plummeting. And
there's a lot to that. There's also, though, it's one of those things that if your job is to pass a test or to teach kids to pass a test, and then you get paid more if you're not doing your job well, right? The indication that is that the kids aren't passing, and so when you have to spend more money on education, it's a terrible system. It's a terrible way of assessing what happens. Now, I do actually like assessments for how well are kids learning certain things, but it shouldn't be based on, first of all, those tests shouldn't be written by the teachers. Secondly, what?
I'm saying
we're all agreeing with Craig.
We're all agreeing with the comment on the screen.
And then
shut up, Dan. We're agreeing with Craig.
Well, then the second thing about it is that, when we talk about what happens in terms of what we think kids should learn, there's this whole sliding scale of the fact that, what we think kids should learn now is so different from just 10 years ago. Even though, we would say, 10 years ago, we had the internet, we had computers and stuff like that. But you look at what's out there now in terms of skills, and it's a completely different set. I mean, the idea, honestly, young kids know this, that it's not really important to know everything. It's important how to know how to find the answer to everything. Yeah. And then there's some things that you should know, but it's more important to know how to use the internet as a research skill.
I remember typing class when I would learn how to type, and now they're like, kids are just like, and I'm like, I legitimately learned how to. It's crazy how far everything's come.
Yeah, they can type like 500 words a minute with their thumbs. I mean, like,
I remember having to put that on my resume when I was like applying for secretarial jobs. Like, I do 90 words per minute because that was like awesome, and now it's like no one cares because everyone uses a computer.
Well, right. And, so many people dictate everything that they use now, too.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I get irritated when I am in a room with other people and I have to type a message because I have to do it like this instead of text Dave that I will be late to the show tonight.
Well, did y'all see that the CDC just recently, for the first time in 20 years, change developmental milestones for children.
Oh, no, I did not.
Yeah, wild. And it's like they delayed everything. So, crawling is no longer a milestone. Walking has been pushed back a few months. Speaking has been pushed back a few months. Like, what are your thoughts on the interconnectedness of that? And, is it connected with COVID? Is it connected with testing? What are your thoughts? Is it connected to anything?
So my son was 8 weeks early. So he had to go through early intervention where they taught him, to do the crawling and the walking and, because being 2 months early, he would be 7 months old doing 5-month-old stuff. I don't know why they would do that. I don't feel like COVID is that because the kid is always at home or at daycare regardless. I'm more baffled, to be honest.
Well, yeah, that's the only reason I brought COVID up was because it's the only thing that's really changed.
Yeah, the only thing, everything gets contributed. We do this now because of COVID. This is how this is now because of COVID. So it would make sense to say that, is it because of COVID? I don't know if there's a parallel.
I think that there's also a, those developmental milestones, for the people who know them, they are incredibly nerve-wracking. So again, having been a teacher, and I was a special ed teacher for 7 years, when my colleagues would have children, they were so freaked out because, so this is called the palmar grasp, and this is called the pincer grasp. And if your baby doesn't do the pincer grasp by a certain amount of time, you're like, oh no, everything's broken. But in reality, before we knew all this stuff, we're like, oh, babies just develop the way they are. And I do think that there is an understanding that a lot of the developmental scales freak parents out all the time.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's almost better to say, your kid's going to do what your kid's going to do. And if he's not doing this by then, it's an interesting thing. Thank you. I was going to say Mr. or Mrs. Hagen, but it may be a cat. So thank you.
Meow Hagen.
So, special education is one of those things that I always tell people. People say, oh, you must be so patient to do it. It's like math. Some people are just good at math. It's not, you're just born with that thing. I was, because of my own, being on the spectrum somewhere, I had a natural affinity in working with that population. It was awesome. I used to wake up every day and be like, yes, work today. And then I got to a place where I thought I was going to get married and have kids. And I thought I couldn't do it on a teacher's salary. And so I went back to school for a computer science degree, which wasn't the worst thing to do in the 90s. But, the stress that's involved with these developmental milestones, I would be happier if they put those away. Very funny. If they push those away and just said, here's what you should be doing. Your kid should be doing certain things along the way. Now, there are milestones that are important, like the growth milestones and things like that.
Right.
That's a big deal. My nephew, was growing along normally. And then all of a sudden he just dropped off the bottom of the growth chart, went from normal to bottom 5% in about 6 months. And his mom, who was at the time a clinical dietitian, she worked in a hospital. She's like, this is not right. And it was the growth charts that let them know, hey, start looking for this, things like that.
Yeah.
To make a long story short, it was like an appetite-based disorder and eating. Well, it's two things actually. So what was the nerve at the bottom of his intestine that says move the food out of the stomach was broken. And so it wouldn't take food out of his stomach. And so it got to the point that eating was painful for him.
Yeah.
And if you're a 2-year-old, that really fucks with the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Because you think of eating as something terrible. And so his mom, being a dietitian, she's like, I just have to get calories into this kid one way or the other. And so they would feed him coconut milk and there's also everything that they could think of until finally they figured out. And as it turns out, it was a cannabis-based medicine that is the trigger. We know that it does stuff for appetites sort of instinctively, but it also triggers that thing that says, hey, you know what? Let's process some food. And thank goodness that we were able to find cannabis medicine.
Emily, I was trying to process what you asked, and I just remembered a statistic, and I looked it up while Dan was talking, is that birth rates are down too. And I bring this up because a lot of my friends who have multiples, and I have an only child, but a lot of my friends who have multiples, their children, as they have more, they tend to hit those milestones a little sooner. And it's because they've got siblings that they see and are able to learn from it. And part of it might be because birth rates are down, and there's a lot more single child households, or even just 2-child, and they're so close in age that might be having a play in it too.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
That's interesting. I mean, I know the birth rate's been down, and basically as countries really move into deeper into economic development, the birth rates tend to drop, as you see across Europe and the United States, Japan. As economies develop, you don't need as many kids to work the farm, so it's
you don't need kids to work the farm, and it becomes apparent that the fewer children you have, the more resources you can devote towards them.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, if it weren't for immigration, the United States would have a declining population.
Yeah.
And that's been true for a while. And Europe is the same way.
Yeah.
The census page says it's down 4.606% since 2019.
Which is, almost counterintuitive, because you think that people get stuck at home alone or stuck at home with each other. You might have more kids. But, it's not like the great blackout, New York City blackout, where 9 months later they have this massive baby boom.
Right. But also, you have the people who are already living together know how to not have children.
Yep.
It's the casual hookups that have really gone away.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
And honestly, there's also a lot of medical conditions. Like I have I struggled with infertility, so I had to do medical procedures to have my son. And there's a huge price tag that's associated with those, that if I were in that position right now today, I wouldn't be able to do it. I was fortunate with the health insurance and stuff I had at the time, and super fortunate. It cost me probably less than around 10 grand for about $40,000 worth of procedure. So, but that's also something, I'm seeing it more and more, people having secondary infertility and, initial infertility, and having to do all these processes. And, that comes with a really big price tag.
And you can't get into the hospital for non-critical procedures right now.
Yeah.
And so, there's a lot of stuff that's going on. Now, the interesting thing about it is, will there, I knock on wood, this is going to be the last terrible year, I hope.
Shut your mouth. What have you just done to us?
It's 2022.
Right.
You just literally screwed us for it to be a duplicate for 2020.
But, will there be another baby boom because of that? I mean,
I think if there was going to be one, it would have already happened. Like, we would have seen an increase because of people being quarantined at home.
Well, yeah, I mean, with inflation, I don't know. I think people are not going to be bringing children into this world.
I'm very thankful I have one right now.
You're going to see the mistakes come out again. The people are going to get out and hook up and have the, I hate to say mistake child, but the accidental children. You're going to see that come back.
I mean, as a society, we're pretty good about that. Doesn't really happen a lot anymore. Not like it used to, right?
No.
I mean, the massive availability of birth control, like it used to be that people understood it, but it was
unless you're
in the ass or something like that. But now there's so many different things people can use. Condoms are everywhere. There's, women have more options than they ever had. Although this is me saying, men, please be responsible. It's your job as much as anybody else's.
Yes.
They've got the day after pill. You got
exactly.
There's so many options.
Exactly.
You do, but you also have states like Texas and Mississippi, and my state's looking at putting in the same restrictions on abortion and things like that help take care of some of those pregnancies as well.
The 3D printed IUD is a year away. All sorts of massive changes like that. But so it's a lot. People are a lot more deliberate, I think, in their choices. but that's a good thing, or at least in my opinion.
If you think about the beginning of Idiocracy, though, like they explain this is exactly what's happening. The smart people stop having children.
Yep, no, it's exactly true. But so here's one of my favorite quotes. Education is the cut on the diamond of intelligence. Yes. But we're all gems and we all sparkle in different lights.
Absolutely.
I get asked all the time if I'm going to have any more, and I'm like, why? He was like pretty perfect when I made him. I don't want any
break the mold. Break the mold.
Yep.
So I'm getting tired of this story, but Russia
so bring it up again.
Russia and Ukraine. Will you guys just fuck already? Oh my God. I mean, so Zelensky is taking the West, not doing enough to help Ukraine, although we're weapons and all kinds of, troops and all that good stuff. Putin says he was going to move troops back off a little bit. Now they're doing more exercises, including nuclear exercises in Belarus. And now we're starting to see, false flag reports and accusations of, manufactured terrorism, the Donbass region, and then the rebel leaders of the east and the western rebel factions in Ukraine are now saying either the civilians should evacuate, and it just feels like we're being pushed into this war. Like there really is no reason for us to go into this war, but we're being pushed into it because we've got political leaders who don't know how to say no.
One of the things that there's a few things that I'm surprised haven't happened, but we land UN observers in other places like that, right? I'm not a big fan of the UN or getting involved, but here's the scenario where I would want to do it. Okay, you know what? Send the UN. Friggin' send Chinese troops. China's part of the UN. Send Chinese troops in eastern Ukraine. Let's see how happy the Russians are to shell them then. But they're not looking for a solution. And I will tell you, if I were a conspiracy person, and I am a libertarian, I would say this has something to do with the midterms.
Oh,
this is a distraction from everything else.
Oh yeah,
just like everything else is for the midterms. Democratic states that are opening up and changing their mandates and everything like that.
Exactly.
It's a game.
Yep. I completely agree with that. And so, what's going to happen here? I don't know. I do kind of wonder if I do kind of wonder if this is something that is really because we don't know what the hell Putin wants. There's nothing that's really that he can get out of this. He can't get the pipeline. If anything, he makes the pipeline less likely to happen. I do think that to a certain extent, they understand that this is the last hurrah for fossil fuels. Fossil fuels so David and I are of an age where we've been hearing people say for the last 35 years, well, fossil fuels are all going to be used up soon. We're going to have to do something else. All right, so fossil fuels are never going to be used up. We've become really good at finding them, but renewables are really coming online now. And so this is it. Putin recognizes the fact they're sitting on top of one of the largest reserves of fossil fuels, but they can't get it out of their country. And if they don't get it out in the next 10 years, it's too late. Nobody's going to want all that stuff. So he wants to get paid. But this clearly isn't going to make it happen any faster.
So, from the Russian perspective, and I'll take this from my teaching from John Moran at Kennesaw State University. He actually worked in the U.S. Embassy in Russia for several years. He wrote a book about Russia's need for a strong leader, like that the constant need. When Yeltsin was seen as weak, the Russian Republic was very was teetering. Right. When Putin comes in, he's much stronger leader. He projects power, all that stuff. Putin's in a game right now where almost he can't back out. Like he can't back down because then he'll be seen as a weak leader.
Sure.
He's got to have a way to save face and get something out of the deal. He wants to keep Russia or Ukraine out of NATO. That's might be the tar that we have to sacrifice.
I mean, if you want to talk about saving face, we can't let that happen either.
Well, I mean, we have to.
The compromise is going to be something like, okay, Ukraine gets to be in NATO, but they can't have any missiles or something like that. But we're not going to back down on whether or not Ukraine gets to be part of NATO, because that would be just as bad.
Yeah, I just don't know that Putin's going to back down unless he gets that concession. I think that's his big thing. The other thing that he wants is an end to the current economic sanctions that are going on against the Russian government, particularly him, so he can free up some of that cash for himself.
I will see. If that's the impasse, I don't see the West backing down particularly. I don't see them backing down on the idea that, free alliances, Ukraine gets to be part of NATO. And I mean, honestly, why would Putin care? Why does he really care if Ukraine is part of NATO? I mean, they're part of a military alliance. It doesn't make any difference one way or the other if they're part of the alliance. It's not like Ukraine's contributing a lot of forces to NATO. All their forces have to stay in the Ukraine anyway to protect against Russian invasion.
Yeah.
So that part about it, but it's the symbolic alliance.
Maybe
he does want a super sweet 16,
or at least the quinceañera. I mean, like, let's do that.
Does he get the big pretty ball gown and everything?
Yeah.
And the
Heck yeah.
And that bear that he rides around.
Heck yeah.
I'll be interested to find. I'll be interested to see what. I feel like we're coming to everybody being done with it. Like you said, would you guys hurry up and just fuck? I mean, even the Russians and the Ukrainians are like, this is really dragging on. But I mean, if it ended up in a conflict, right, it would be disastrous for the Russians.
Yeah.
I mean, you think about, because the right strategy for the Ukrainians, right, is not to meet them on the field of battle. The right strategy is to do what Iraq did, the Fedayeen. Exactly. Yeah. And then, wage a war of constant sabotage.
Yeah.
Which,
especially on the pipeline that's already going through Ukraine, but also hit Belarus. They're putting that pipeline through Belarus, and so there are targets for the Ukrainians to go after that will do far more damage to the Russians than
exactly
what Russia's planning on for Ukraine if they are actually going to ever do this.
Yeah, I can't. I mean, we'll see, but it does feel like it's sort of past the moment. I don't want to say that Biden played it well, because I don't think he did, but I feel like the posturing, once people started to talk about it, it was over for Russia to really get in there. I mean, if they go at this point in time, because that's the other thing about it is, so during the first Gulf War, this, I can't remember which book this is in, but one of the people who wrote about it talked about the fact that American special forces went into Kuwait and trained the Kuwaitis on how to attack and disable Iraqi soldiers. Like, one of the famous stories is that it used to be that because the Iraqis had set up checkpoints all throughout Kuwait, and you would go there and they would stop and they would search you, and if you had anything good, they would take it from you. And so they would bake bread, but they would put soap in it, so that when the soldiers would take it, they would eat it, and then they would get sick and they would be incapacitated. That sort of thing, that sort of inside anti-soldier stuff. Ukrainians are going to crush the Russians with that. It's very difficult to occupy a modern city a modern country, unless you can provide everything for yourself. And the Russians aren't good at that. They're not. I mean, it's the one thing that, I don't like anything about the military itself, but they're really good at, like, the quartermaster stuff. That's the one thing Americans excel at. We can make sure that everybody gets fed in the army.
Yeah. Supply chain is everything in military.
Right. And so, you're trying to occupy a country the size of the Ukraine. I don't know how they do it. I mean, there's all sorts of terrible ways that they could do it. I don't think the Russians have the stomach for doing that either, hopefully.
Well, and it's only going to take a couple months for them to be kind of reminded of their experience in Afghanistan.
Exactly.
Right. This comment, let's face it, there's an issue to that. I mean, there is some accuracy to it, but I think the parts that have already been ceded to Russia unofficially are the parts that have a large Russian population. And the Donbass region on the east side also has. I mean, this is all the legacy of Stalin moving
exactly
in and out, moving Ukrainians to the west and moving Russians into the east. It's a long time these people have been there, and this has been his argument about not letting NATO be in Ukraine and not letting NATO be in the Baltic states. Although we told him to pound sand on the Baltic states. We told Yeltsin to pound sand on the Baltic states because those states don't want to be part of the Soviet Union anymore. They don't want to be part of Russia anymore. So we gave them protection. There's a whole central part of that country that is Ukrainian, ethnic Ukrainian, has a long history in that country that they're not going to be all yippee happy about being absorbed into the Russian superstate.
Yeah.
But
I mean, full disclosure, I am Ukrainian by heritage. And yeah, it's exactly what you said. Stalin, in an effort to sort of subject or make the Ukrainian subject, moved a lot of Russian nationals there, by force. And now they're saying, oh, look, there are all these Russians here. Well, yeah, you put them there. But it doesn't make it any easier.
Sure.
I mean, the best part about it is, screw the bound. That's where we should be in favor of no borders.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Free passage back and forth, et cetera, et cetera. The problem is that, of course, that's not what the Russians want.
Nope.
They want border control their way, et cetera, et cetera. It's not our issue, but there is. I mean, this is one of the big libertarian questions, right? Might not be our issue, but are there crimes against humanity that we would feel compelled to act?
Yeah.
Like Boko Haram, when they kidnapped all those kids. Or they kidnapped all those girls, right? Is that the sort of thing that, if the United States had the capacity to stop it, would we say, yeah, we do that kind of stuff?
All right, so let's continue to pick on Russia.
Olympics.
Yeah, so did you guys watch the Olympics?
No. I mean, they stopped it after the U.S. lost the hockey, which I thought was unfair for everybody else. That they canceled all the rest of the Olympics, but
the biggest story that came out of the Olympics was the story of Kamila Valieva, the Russian phenom, 15-year-old Russian phenom, skating. First couple nights of the Olympics, she and her Russian teammates won the team competition.
Or so we thought.
Well, yeah, or so we thought. All of a sudden, the medal ceremony was delayed, and people were like, what's going on? And the story comes out that she tested positive for some kind of angina medicine. I can't remember what
she tested positive. I was listening to something earlier when you said we were going to be talking about this. I was like, I need to be somewhat educated, more than the basic stuff that I know. She tested positive for the one thing that's on the list, but she actually tested positive for 2 other performance enhancement drugs that just aren't on the list.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, they decided to suspend her, and that was appealed to the Court of Arbitration for Sport, and the arbitrators allowed. There's a reason why they allowed her to compete, and that it is that she is a minor, and she is not considered responsible for her actions.
And she shouldn't be competing.
That's the thing. Like, I didn't understand about this whole thing. Like, okay, yeah, she's a minor. I'm not gonna, I don't think she should be suspended long term. You figure out how long that drug is in their system, and then once that drug is out of their system, once they test clean, they can go back to competing. Now, her coaches should be suspended forever. Like that, those people who are putting dope into a minor.
Well, especially since she's not competing with Team Russia, right? Because Team Russia is already banned for doping.
Yeah,
she's competing for the Russian Olympic Committee because they couldn't send a Russian team.
Yeah, so this is the third straight Olympics that the Russian team cannot compete under their country name because of their doping history. In 2018, there were the Olympic athletes from Russia, so it was like the OAR, kind of a shitty 2000s band, and then this time they were the Russian Olympic Committee. Let's start making it a little more painful to skate for Russia if this continues, a systematic doping. Why don't you call them the systemic doping nation? Or
actually, I think that next year they're going to compete under the name Commicheusets.
Yeah. They got to make it painful for this stuff, and especially when on the systemic stuff that they're doing. The doping of minors. I think if you're a coach and your minor under your tutelage ends up getting busted for dope, then that should be a lifetime ban at all levels.
And we're it's the idea that the Olympics is a wonderful thing where everybody comes together, blah, 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 blah. And then we just sabotage. Thanks, Craig. We literally sabotage that by saying, oh, you know what? We're not going to hold firm to any principles. First of all, how bullshit is it that the Olympics is in China in the first place, right? When, and I can't remember her name, the Chinese tennis player.
I know who you're talking about.
When she disappeared, somebody in the audience will get her name up. But when she disappeared for 6 weeks, we should have just said, you know what? We can't send any athletes to your country for the Olympics. Sorry, China. And one of the things that they talk about the fact is
Peng Shuai.
Peng Shuai. Shuai.
Yeah, Peng Shuai, I think is how it's pronounced.
Is that it is the United States is always the emergency stopgap for the Olympics, because we could hold the Olympics in 10 or 15 different cities if we needed to, right? It's not a big deal. We don't have to build any facilities or anything like that. Although I will say the 2022 the 2020 Olympics were supposed to be in Boston. Boston was the leading bid, and the people of Boston said, nah, we're not paying for it. And in the contract, there's a thing that you have to sign that says, if the Olympic Committee asks you to build this or raise taxes to do that, you have to do it. And Boston, super democratic place, they're like, nope, we're not paying that.
Well, I mean, the history of the Olympics, you look at some of the previous host cities, Athens is probably one of the biggest examples of this, where they have all these facilities. Like there's a softball facility in Athens. They don't play softball in Athens. They've got, team handball. Now is more of a European sport, but Atlanta has a team handball facility that I think is now a college gymnasium or something like that. Right. I mean, but there are facilities that they pour all this money into that just sit there and rot. Rio has the same thing. Yeah. I'm hoping that when Los Angeles hosts the Olympics in 26, I think, the Summer Olympics, 26, 28, somewhere in that time.
Must be 28.
That they're going to be using
the existing facilities, the Coliseum.
The existing facilities. I mean, if you can put a damn NASCAR race in the LA Coliseum, you can do pretty much anything there.
Right. For sure, they can do all the track and field there.
There is SoFi Stadium or any of the other massive mega facilities they have in Los Angeles. So.
Right, but obviously, since it's California, they're going to tax the heck out of the people to make it happen.
Oh yeah.
But back to this whole thing of so we shouldn't have had the Olympics in China in the first place. Yeah. And then there's all the crap that the Chinese have pulled during the Olympics, right? Journalists abducted, terrible people being shut down from doing interviews, all that sort of thing. And then this whole Russian scandal of, we're going to overlook this even though it's obvious, complete bullshit. Just pull it.
I
Yeah,
know.
exactly. Tax
Shocking.
But I actually I think it's time for the Olympics to move away from the Olympic Committee because it's too awkward for a million different reasons. I mean, first of all, the issue of trans athletes, I don't want the Olympic Committee figuring that out. It's so incredibly complicated anyway. It certainly shouldn't be done by, people who can't figure out that it's not okay for Olympic committees to be giving juniors drugs to make them show up and perform better on things.
Or to give a country Olympics when it has a massive genocide going on in the western part of the country.
Exactly. Right. All that stuff. So let's, screw those guys. Let's just take
that's almost a standard feature of a lot of these international organizations. Like, who remembers when Saudi Arabia and Iran were put on the UN Human Rights Council? I mean, like, it's just fraught with bad decisions because we want to give everyone a turn and
everyone gets a participation trophy.
Yeah.
Right.
Breaking news tonight, folks. A group of libertarians doesn't like committees.
Well, I can absolutely
people working together.
I can understand after being on a 8.5 hour committee last night.
Well, 8.5 hours.
The crazy thing, of course, excuse me, is that this is where multinational corporations really could step up. I think Microsoft and Amazon, they should sponsor the Olympic Games. You get it for free over your Prime network, and
it's a good idea. Why not? Brought to you by Brondo.
Send that to them as a suggestion.
Right.
Let them pay for it. I'm more than happy to let them pay for all that stuff.
I mean, we are literally just talking about idiocracy tonight. Like, Brondo, it's got electrolytes.
Ryan, you like committees. Not all libertarians like committees.
Right. My favorite joke about this is a lot of people say, "Oh, libertarians love bylaws." No, we love bylaws.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's nice.
They give order when there's chaos, but we still don't want them.
Yeah.
And half the people don't even follow them as of recently. So
this is true.
Well, it's funny. Yeah, I guess, Dave, are you going up to the Pennsylvania convention? Because I
am, man. I'm going to be there. I'm going to be rocking down in.
Emily, are you the only one who's not coming up to visit me?
I am coming.
Oh, nice.
Yep. I'm looking forward to it. Well, here's the thing. There's this secret sandwich that only Philadelphians know about, or people in Eastern Pennsylvania. The roasted pork sandwich that's supposed to be just as good as the cheesesteak, and I've never had it.
I don't
and so I have been told there's a place called John's.
Yes.
Yes, that's it?
I'm familiar with that concept, yes.
All right. I am very excited for that. I mean,
is that
the only reason I'm going to the convention is so I can stop and get a sandwich along the way.
But, I think that's in Philly, isn't it? Or is it up in Philly? I was going to say, you're really detouring just to get a sandwich.
Oh, right, because it's in Harrisburg, isn't it?
It's in Williamsport. It's up towards State College.
All right, I guess I'm not coming. I'm not going to get the sandwich then.
Sorry. I mean, you can
Yeah, no. There's got to be some place in Western Pennsylvania that does it too, right? I don't know. We'll see. I don't care.
I don't know. I mean, it's either that or Permante's. There's like a line, I think. In the middle.
The thing is,
with what?
Permante's.
Permante's, they've actually stretched across the state. We have two in York.
Oh wow. Okay. Yeah, we got one in Hagerstown, so in Maryland.
They're just now opening the second one in York County, so they're stretching.
All right. We'll end the show on 2 deaths.
Such a joyful note.
So, in recent days, one of the associates of Jeffrey Epstein, Jean-Luc Brunel, was found hanging in his jail cell. Of course, the cameras didn't capture anything.
Who saw that coming?
Yeah. Now Ghislaine Maxwell is her family is worried that she's going to get unalived pretty soon. Not that I would. I mean, look, I don't want the state to execute people. Would I feel bad if she, took the eternal celestial dirt nap? No, but I don't want somebody to murder her. And I want information to come out. I want the truth to come out about this stuff.
Right.
This guy's death wouldn't have given me that fear if I were her family. Epstein's death would have given me that fear if I were her family.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. We need the truth to come out about this whole thing because it's, once Ghislaine Maxwell does get suicided.
Spill the beans.
Well, no, she'll probably get suicided before she spills the beans, or at least, very quickly after she spills the beans, and then probably the person who recorded her spilling the beans gets suicided as well.
See, I would think, I mean, she should just hurry up and do it. That's actually her best defense.
Yeah.
Because then there's no reason to silence her anymore if she's told everything.
Yeah. Once it's out there, that there's no reason to kill her other than just straight revenge.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, really, her best defense would be to just start talking. Just let everyone interview her and tell her side of the story and tell exactly what Jeffrey Epstein did and who, I think what everybody wants to know, who was in on it, who participated.
If she did that, she would probably get the security so that it wouldn't happen to her in theory. That,
right.
That's, I mean, I would never put myself in that position.
And don't telegraph it. Don't say, okay, well, next Friday at 2:30 p.m. I'm going to do an interview where I reveal everything because Thursday at 2:30 p.m. She'll be done. Interview.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. She just needs to drop the dime on Bill Clinton, and then we can get on with everything.
Yeah. Yeah. Bill Clinton, really put it out there on Prince Andrew. Bill Richardson. A lot of politicians that have participated. I mean, it was funny because Bill Richardson was really one of the only people that got brought out into the public before Epstein was killed.
Yep.
Epstein had a massive ranch in New Mexico, and it's sad because I know Bill Richardson. I met Bill Richardson several times. I would never have put that with him, but
But it's an interesting thing because it does. Like I thought about this a few times that there was sort of this. Let's call it what it was. This sort of skeezy, terrible man culture where you saw this thing that Jeffrey Epstein had, and there were people who, like they said, well, I guess it's okay here. They were willing to put aside their morality and say, oh, for this momentary pleasure, I'm going to ignore the reality that these people are obviously captives here.
Yep.
And they did that, and you can't get away with it. You can't get around that. And I think Bill Gates is also implicated in this.
Mm-hmm.
There's part of the divorce with him and Melinda. And so it is this idea of the ultimate in elitism. That there are people who are slaves and peons, and it goes to a lot of other shitty stuff. Sorry, dude. I have these hickory nuts, and they're incredibly hard to open. And so behind the scenes, I'm trying to open the hickory nuts with the pliers. Thanks for noticing.
Is it working? Does it work?
It does, but it's 50-50. About half of them I break. But a regular nutcracker is no good at all on a hickory nut.
Get a vice and a handsaw, bro, and just
better snack
it in half.
Chocolate covered popcorn.
Oh, okay. She has the best snack.
Or this weed edible.
Oh,
this is white chocolate and pretzel popcorn, and this is dark chocolate with sea salt.
Nice.
I have been out of edibles since Christmas. Sucks.
Side note. My son will be selling that popcorn as a fundraiser if anybody wants any.
All right. That's
all
good.
All right.
And just to be clear, it's not THC enhanced or anything like that.
It is not. It's just delicious.
All right. just delicious is good for you.
You will still be able to compete in the Olympics if you eat it.
All right. Well,
that's never going to be a problem for me.
Although, but thank you for bringing that up too, because what's her name who got kicked out of the Olympics for weed? The sprinter, man, she is. I mean, she's talking about it. Yeah, it's completely bullshit.
I did that on purpose, by the way, just so you could have that moment.
Very clever, Kristine.
Nice.
So what was your second thing, Dave?
A second death. This one is a very sad one for me. Kind of the one of the people that kind of led me down the path of libertarianism. PJ O'Rourke, fellow at Cato Institute, legendary author, was one of the original Gonzo journalists. Was an editor at National Lampoon in the 70s, and had a varied career. He was like a war correspondent. He was one of the test drivers for Car and Driver and did articles on that. Just a great author, a great guy. I mean, kind of a man's man when you read his stories. He lived his life. He lived his life very well. And he died of lung cancer.
Yeah.
Which, knowing his life, not a big surprise of how that took him out. But
one of the things,
was a great guy.
One of the things that I always liked about him, and I've been thinking about this a lot, is that he wasn't just funny, although he was hilarious.
Mm-hmm.
But underneath all this stuff was an idea of kindness, right? Kindness to other human beings. And I've been thinking a lot about how a lot of people want libertarianism to move kindness out of the equation. And I think that's a big mistake for us. We are meant to be kind. The ultimate realization is that we are connected to each other as human beings. And that thing that binds us is what makes our time on this planet special. And, PJ O'Rourke, and I would ask people, they get chances, there's a lot of stuff out there on the internet. Just read his stuff. It'll make you laugh. It'll make you feel better. It'll make you think, but it'll also make you think, you know what? I do have a responsibility to these other people. I don't want government telling me what that responsibility is. I don't want anybody telling me that, this is the law and I have to support these people doing this shit. But I want to be aware of the fact that, if I see somebody who needs help, it's okay for me to help them. I don't need to wait for the government.
That's actually the form of libertarianism that we try to show the community here in York. We've fed the homeless. We've collected over 700 pounds of food for the food bank last summer. We do trash cleanups in downtown. We really tried to show them that when the government is removed, people will step up, because at the end of the day, it's about maintaining each other. It's about lifting each other up, that you have a voice, you have a purpose. And that's literally the libertarianism that I believe in. And that I'm trying to teach my son about. And that's what, and I'll be frank. I didn't know much about PJ prior to this evening and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I talked to my husband, I researched him a little bit, and just a little bit that I saw, everything you said, Dan, is very accurate in the stuff that I've read. And I plan on reading more, because he sounds like someone, I was asked on the last podcast that I was on about libertarian philosophers and stuff that I idolize, is the way I took it. And I was like, I don't really have anyone. But this guy kind of sounds like someone who just, who really kind of understood that we all kind of need to stick together to make it through it.
Yeah. I always bristle when people say, who do you idolize? I mean, for me, I've had my heart broken so many times meeting my heroes, and it to me, PJ O'Rourke was, a great guy, great at the retail aspect of why we believe what we believe, rather than the, political treatise of libertarianism. It was just really the retail side of, why should we not, advocate for these, for more laws, or why should we, treat each other with kindness and respect the individual. I always worry, because I think that's one of the issues that we have with libertarianism right now, is that there are people that will worship people within the movement to the point where they ignore the bad stuff.
the movement.
Right.
They move. They'll ignore anything that really is kind of a bad idea, or because to speak out against them is to call them out on everything. And no, it's just a certain thing. If you're gonna say something stupid, I'm gonna tell you that. I may not say, "Hey man, that was stupid." I'm gonna say, "Hey, I don't think that was really a great thing that you did there, but here's how it could be better." I mean, I can understand maybe what you're saying, but here's how it could be better. And we're just not seeing that anymore.
But I'll take that a step further, because a little Dunning-Kruger stuff here. We don't have a monopoly on right. Nobody does. But what we do know is the things that when we see them, we're like, that's wrong. Yeah. And so, like, as an example, there's this little brouhaha brewing about Texas and Spike and stuff like that. Spike did the right thing. And he didn't try to silence anybody. What he said was, I will not be on the stage with this person. So I am silencing myself in this respect. And I'm assuming that everybody's following stuff, although it's some inside libertarian baseball. But it is that sort of thing of us saying, when we see something wrong and saying, you know what, I cannot participate in that. I cannot support it. You've got to do that thing on your own. And that's a different thing. And that, you sort of see, I had the great privilege to be at the Virginia convention yesterday. And, we didn't know what was going to happen. Could have potentially been angry, whatever. Virginia has a couple good things going for it. First of all, they have one of the great elder statesmen of the movement in Jim Lark, who, when the time came, and I always say the greatest gift that you can ever be given is a call that you can answer. They needed him to do something. He stood up, he ran the convention, and it went flawlessly because nobody was going to argue or question Dr. Lark when he was running the convention. And of course, he did everything perfectly. But the other thing about it was that Virginians have this state culture of Virginians first. And it was really amazing to see that. And I experienced it in Texas. Massachusetts does not have that at all. Maryland doesn't really have that, but Virginia got this culture. And they're like, you know what? The things that you're talking about, we disagree with, but you're not wrong. I can't say that you're wrong. I'm not going to call you out and say that you're wrong in doing those things. You do you, I'll do me. Let's not make any rules that forces either of us to live the way the other person wants to. And that solves so much more stuff than the way that we try to do a lot of other things.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Anybody? Kristine, go ahead and plug your candidacy again.
I'm running for the Libertarian Party of Pennsylvania's chair position. So if you are coming to Pennsylvania, whether in any capacity, I hope that you support me. And if you have any questions, you can feel free to reach out to me on Facebook at Kristine Cousler-Womack for LPPA chair.
Excellent. Best of luck to you. Can't wait to see you again in a couple weeks. It's not that far away. It's like 2 weeks, huh?
It's 2 weeks from this past Friday. Yep.
Yeah.
Are you going too, Dave?
Yeah, I'll be there.
All right, man. That's going to be fun. I'm excited.
We're going to have fun, man.
Yeah.
Emily, are you coming? You're muted.
She said yes.
I heard yes. I heard she's coming and she's voting for Kristine.
All I know is Emily keeps avoiding me, seeing me in person. I'm just kidding.
Oh, yeah. That's not true. You said you would come to Illinois and you did.
I tried really hard.
Who broke whose heart, Dan?
It was my fault. I can't remember why I couldn't come, but there was something else.
It was that y'all thing down in town.
Oh, yeah. It was the big y'all conference.
Yeah.
That was it. That was unfortunate.
So, Dan, plug People for Liberty.
All right. Well, so I have some exciting People for Liberty news.
Nice.
We have completed one of our giant projects. We have invented this thing called the CALL, the Critically Analyzed Liberty List. And it is essentially a list of anybody who has one libertarian bone in their body across the country. If we can find a way to get you into this list. And so right now it's about 5.5 million people, and we're looking to make it larger. One of the things that we want to do is we want to work with candidates who are running anywhere as a libertarian. You give us your list. We will give it back to you decorated with everything that we know about these people. But the most important thing is that there are a lot of people out there who are actually liberty people. They just don't know to call themselves that.
Yeah.
And what we want to do is find a way to let these people know, if I can sing a little Disney song, you are not alone. I am here with, okay, I'm going to stop.
Yeah.
But that thing about it is that there's this aloneness sometimes that liberty people feel because they don't know that there's other liberty people out there. If you have one liberty issue, you are a liberty person. We just need you to start talking like that. So it's been a really exciting project for us to work on. And now we're getting ready to start using that giant list to help liberty causes around the country.
Excellent. And that's people, the number 4, liberty.org.
Yes.
And so, yeah, drop by and give them a like and a follow, and go and plug my buddy's business, Travis Rednick, who was on earlier. I don't know if he's still on with us tonight, but he runs the Deep End Antiques in Beckley, West Virginia. And that's the Facebook page for the Deep End Antiques. They do crystals. They do, West Virginia is very famous for blown glass and all that stuff. He does Army surplus. He might have spiders in there. But it's a great shop. Go visit Travis. If you find yourself in the Beckley, West Virginia area, drop by and see Travis Rednick at the Deep End Antiques, and tell him Dave sent you. So Travis is my partner in crime on the hockey show on Thursday nights. We broadcast at 7:00 Eastern time, talking about the week in hockey. So if you are so inclined, give us a listen to that. Give us a like and a follow on Facebook, Twitter. Let's see, we're on Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, LinkedIn, and something else.
Smoke signals.
Yeah, smoke signals. I'm sure some people are putting video hexes on me right now, so it's all good.
Oh my.
All right. So thanks everyone for joining us. Anybody have anything else? Emily, you got anything to plug?
No, man. Weed. I'm high.
Fuck yeah. Fuck yeah. That is awesome. That's what I love.
Love. I gotta plug love, man.
Love.
That's right. Okay, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. Join us on the deep dive next week. We don't have a guest, so I might try and get. We're supposed to have Liz Terwilliger on the show first week of February. She got sick. That was the week I got sick too. So
I got a guest for you.
Uh-oh.
This guy, a great guy, Alex Bromberg, he started this thing in Lowell, Massachusetts called the Kindness Collaborative. And essentially it's a mutual aid society. And what happened, you might remember like 4 years ago in northern Massachusetts, the gas company, they made a mistake and they overpressurized the lines, and like 300 people's houses caught on fire. Exploded from the inside. I mean, all sorts of really terrible stuff happened. Only one person was killed, and it could have been so much worse. But all these people banded together and formed this mutual aid society, and it's still going strong. In fact, it's growing and growing. And like people are like, during COVID, it's been this amazing mutual lifeline. So I'll contact Alex, see if we can get him on.
Okay, sounds good. If not, we'll just do a show next week and talk about all the fun current events. Kristine, you are more than welcome to come back anytime with us and hang out with us.
She's got to whip votes. She's busy
for
2 weeks.
Whip them good.
I'm not trying to whip votes. I'm just trying to show people who I am and what I stand for, and let the chips fall where they may.
But if you do, you get that cool Devo hat.
Yeah, maybe Kevin will give me his king crown.
There you go. All right.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Good night, everybody.
Have a great night.